Hey, hello, well, Matt. Welcome to the pregame hangout.
I want to be in Aaron's background. Just
Yeah.
like go there.
The nature.
Pretty neat.
This might be part of the game if you make choices.
Yay!
I don't
Is
know.
that the Forbidden Forest?
We're in a pretty beautiful spot regardless. So, yeah. Forbidden Forest.
I mean, I assume the caves would kind of suck to live in long term, but they're fun
Probably.
to visit.
Totally.
I don't know.
Want to be a tourist?
I have no idea because you get like cave dwellings where people lived there for a very long time and made them relatively comfortable, and you have to assume they weren't like, yeah, let's choose this awful experience and we could pick something else. But also, I don't disagree, so I don't know.
Well, in the American Southwest, they weren't great, but that was because they were forced by circumstances. They'd had like stone room blocks that were up on the sort of mesas, and then they were forced to go in sort of the cliff dwellings, and so those weren't as nice to live in as the room blocks. But it was because of whatever, starvation or war or whatever, that was pushing them to be defensible.
Having been to Mesa Verde, that is definitely defensible. And
very defensible
to get to.
Until the aliens came and took them all away. I'm just kidding, Rhiannon. It's a joke.
Watch Rhiannon's head explode.
Yeah. Top 10 things to say to an archaeologist.
I've learned that, like, because I know archaeologists who make those kind of jokes even themselves, and I'm like, I'm not into those kind of jokes. So I find if I'm like, when somebody first makes those kind of, aliens or dinosaurs or Indiana Jones, if I'm just like, oh, I'm going to get you, they're like, whoa, and then it never happens again. And then I just get to like not have to hear that joke for the 500th time.
Sounds like a success to me.
Strategic anger. I have always wanted to go to Petra in Jordan.
Oh, ditto.
Which is kind of, if not cave, then cave adjacent. But
My
they
wife
had
has been
very
to Petra.
cool
It is amazing.
setups. Yeah. I watched
I have pictures. I'm very jealous.
Documentary about basically the way they did like hydraulics and plumbing and stuff, and it's brilliant. It's really cool. But yeah, so I don't know, but
real quick, Shay, thank you so much for resubscribing. 20 months, or for 21 months total. That is like almost as long as our channel has been alive, or maybe it is as long as our channel has been alive. So thank you. Hidden Target says to you, Rhiannon, dinosaurs were the first aliens that actually left the planet instead of going extinct. Sounds plausible.
Well,
what do you think about that?
I don't even mind, because we've like left archaeology behind. So like, sure, say whatever you want about dinosaurs.
Well, I would like to go to Petra, one day for sure. I also want to go to like Eastern Europe. Which country is it that has like the skeleton mausoleum? Like not the Catacomb Saints.
No.
Oh,
I mean, because there's a lot of
the one that I think Poland has the salt mine that's carved out. But the one with like the monks that kind of built that one, I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm like blanking on the name for some reason. I haven't thought about travel at all for like 2 years now. So my top 10 list has sat like unupdated, sadly.
I was watching kind of an interesting thing that was coming out, because various cultures across Europe have catacombs. And they were coming at it in terms of like, say, Euro-American, North American cemeteries, and how if you get buried in like a North American cemetery, there's this sort of idea that like what you're purchasing with your plot is that it's going to be upkept for like ever. And we don't sort of think about like how long that means, because we haven't been here that long. True. Whereas, in Europe, if you're purchasing a plot, there's more of the idea that like you purchase it for a while, and then eventually like your bones are taken up and removed and put in like some kind of catacomb kind of thing, and then the plot can bury somebody new. And I thought that was, I'm sure that's really sort of like blending together a whole bunch of different cultures, how they look at it, but it was a cool sort of way to think about it.
There's a book I really like. I can never remember the author's name, but he also wrote the Heaven's Bones, the book about the Catacomb Saints. But it's called Empire of Death, and the charnel houses is part of what he gets into, where it's like, okay, the bones are in the ground. Now they're in this pile that we keep for bones. And he mentions the chapel that's built out of the monk skeletons.
Yeah, I think a number of people in chat actually got it. It's in Poland.
yeah?
Randy says it's the Sedlik ossuary. That sounds about right. I'm
yeah.
not sure if it's Original Angsted replies to you, Rhiannon, and he said, like subletting your grave?
Well, it's not yours.
Oh, okay. Yes. Subletting a grave.
You rent a grave for a while, and then you get taken out of it, and then the next person gets it. Stephen is saying things, but I keep wondering, like, what is he saying?
I don't know. I can't hear him.
Yeah, you're still muted.
Silence on Stephen.
Maybe he's not talking to us. He's looking off camera. Maybe. Give us a thumbs up if you're talking to us, Stephen. Stephen, are you there? Give us a sign. Okay.
Stephen, can you hear me?
Well, because I can't physically travel, I enjoy like these TTRPG games where we get to travel to locations like Rashomon. So I really enjoyed like all those photos that we got to see like last time. You got more pretty nature pics for us, Aaron?
I have more pics. I need to load them in to Roll20. I had a rough day, guys, so we'll see how well this goes.
Can go back to talking about bones again. One of the choices when I went with my parents' choir is kind of roadie to Paris, and so you could choose to do the catacombs, but they're of course very sort of touristy, and there's a long line to get in and whatever. So I chose under Notre Dame. There's a little museum where they done some excavating for some building project, and so there was what happens all over Europe, which is where you hit like some Roman shit, and you hit like 17th century shit, 16th century shit, and like from whatever tribe was there. I don't know that it got back that far. Under York Minster, they went all the way back, like Vikings and Romans, and like back to the tribes. So there was this little museum, and so you could see like the hypocast floor from a Roman bathhouse that had been underneath it, and like some pieces of a wall of a earlier version of Notre Dame. And so I was like, yes. So of course I went to that, and nobody much was there because it was fairly small. It was like, say, the size of like a couple rooms in a typical museum, because that was just whatever had been excavated under, and they sort of put up the signage to explain it. And then they had a bunch of cool stuff. They had a good sort of 3D model progression of Notre Dame, starting, beginning and then building it out.
Cool.
That was like the best story for me to test captions on multiple screens. So thank you so much, Rhiannon.
Nah.
But I feel like you'd be a cool person to travel with, Rhiannon, like anywhere in the world, just because you get to like point out all these like interesting insights or facts. Is there like what's on your travel list? Like, where's a dream place that you haven't been to?
So I would love to go to sort of any of the Mesoamerican kind of cultural sites. But a lot of them, they've, sort of closed them because there are too many tourists who are just wearing them down, and I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin went to, I think, Machu Picchu just before they sort of closed it down to tourists. and I'm a little bit envious of him. Um, I I really enjoy going basically anywhere because everywhere has history. And I do enjoy old world history because when you have a really big built environment that's out of stone versus wood, then there's something to see. And I really love the feeling of sort of walking around in something that somebody built. And a lot of the archaeology that I'm doing on the West Coast with pre-contact people, they had architecture. They were building big feeder longhouses and stuff, but that's gone. And so my science brain is very engaged by like stuff that has been deposited in the ground, but my sort of like emotions are less engaged by walking on the ground beside the place where the stuff is buried. And so I really love going to on the West Coast sites where they have like various tribes have sort of rebuilt longhouses and stuff like that. And I really enjoy that because the descendants have not only rebuilt it but sort of infused it with some of their sort of sense of place and ancestry and that sort of thing. And that's something you can walk around in. And that's super cool to me because then like standing and these are like when they've made it into a museum, so they're inviting tourists to come to it. Standing in sort of the main room with a round doorway and the natural light coming in from the ceiling and from the smoke hole over the central hearth, and like just that's a really great feeling for me. So I guess the long answer is anywhere there are buildings.
So that makes me think of like it's not quite the same thing, but like Williamsburg, Virginia, for example, where it's like they recreate like a period, a certain time period, and then they recreate all the architecture, and they hire like actors or volunteers or professional recreators to like populate it and be the blacksmiths and the tavern keepers and things like that. Like, how do you feel about those kind of places?
So Williamsburg has been a bit Disneyfied.
Yeah, totally.
In that there's a lot to buy and to eat and a lot to like sort of stand there and watch. And it's very heavily sort of attended, so you can't really get into a conversation with people. The Plymouth reenactment we went to, Jamestown, we went to the archaeological site and they have a reenactment living history museum next to it, and we couldn't do both. We just didn't have time. So I'd like to go back to Jamestown at some point, but the one at Plymouth, that was an interesting one because there it was less of a like we're putting on a show for you like Williamsburg did, and more of a like we're going about our life. And the trouble is that there's a sweet spot somewhere where somebody going about their life is not necessarily very interesting. Sort of like, oh, they're like cooking and the cooking is stirring a pot, and so like various
go
reenactors
romance
are
somebody, go make a scandal.
Not even that, but like some reenactors are better at when you come in and they're like cooking, they're like, oh yeah, this is kind of what I cook normally, and it's a little special because the cowslips are blooming and those are used to blah 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 blah. Like some reenactors are like that, and some reenactors are like they're doing their thing, and you come in, you're like, what are you doing? They're like, I'm cooking.
Yeah.
This is what life was like back in the day. You stir this pot for 8 hours a day, then you let it sit, then you stir it for 8 hours
There's
more.
one person whose only job is to chop wood.
Yeah, I'm the wood chopper.
It was remarkable. Some of the journals of people who lived back in the 1800s. I wish I could remember what journal it was, but most of this guy's time was chopping freaking wood because that's how you heated. And there was always the little old lady who had no one to do it, so he would chop wood for her. But that was his journal. It was like chopped wood. Tuesday, chopped wood. It was
Day
my
1000,
God.
still chopping wood.
Frontier House one of those where they take normal people and have them reenact stuff. I think most all of them, they failed them because they were like families, and most of them they failed them because they had them doing their reenacting in the summer into fall, and then they pulled them before winter. And then they had their experts go through and sort of like look at their food stores and look at their wood pile and say, did you survive the winter? And I think, I don't know that anybody passed. A couple of people failed because they had like no wood.
Yeah.
And they told them like, chop wood, and then when you think you've chopped enough wood, chop twice as much wood as that. When you chop that, chop twice more. And then
read this woodchopper's diary. Learn from this.
The
Do
other
what he
one
did every day.
They failed. They failed them because of living in a one-room cabin. One couple's marriage was basically falling apart. Like it did fall apart as far as like they followed up with them 6 months later or whatever, and they were separated.
You didn't chop enough wood.
No, it was just that they were like, you two got to live for a whole winter and not go outside and live in this one-room cabin. Like you failed because you might have killed each other.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
They had to intervene.
Yeah.
I had a really, I loved the reenactors in England at Warwick Castle. They did this thing where they had all these people who knew the nuance of whatever craft they were into. The Fletcher, they had a coin, a minter, someone who minted coins, and what they did was they froze the day you went there to check out the castle. It was a certain day in history. It was the day before a big battle, I can't remember what it was. But so everyone had a job they were doing that was very focused, like the Fletcher was bailing arrows and yelling at the apprentices, and the person who was herding geese was trying to get feathers for the, whatever. It was really cool. And man, those people know their stuff. It's fascinating.
And to hear them tell like when they don't quite know either. We talked about it before. Ruth Goodman and a couple other people went to build that castle in France where they're building it with real historical methods. And they're trying to make a water wheel. And they don't have any records of water wheels from that far back. So they don't know how they were made. And so they have like a little bit of archaeology and maybe like a picture of one in a manuscript or something, which it does not help you like actually manufacture it. And so they
stuff like that.
they made one,
Awesome.
and it didn't work.
Oh.
And they almost got it to work, but it wasn't quite working. So like clearly the knowledge that they needed to make that style of water wheel had been lost. And I thought, I was like, my heart was going out to them because I'm sure it's so frustrating because it was the wood was swelling in a particular way so that it wouldn't turn. It would just spill.
Interesting.
And so like being that close, but yet it continued. And they're like, oh, well, maybe we need to lube up the like axle or something. But no, it was just something about the wood swelling. So
that makes me wonder how much it makes me wonder a little bit about how much the climate has actually changed between like those time period and then our time period, and what effects like that might have on things such as like wood swelling. Because I guess when you first said that, I thought of it as like a moisture thing.
This was where you put it in the stream means that it's more in or out of the water. So it's at the time.
Oh, gotcha.
Like you build the wheel and then it's more in the water, more out of the water, or water's getting on it, and that's what's swelling it.
So yeah, it something that I learned at another museum in Bath, England, where it's this amazing 19th century museum of all these machines run by belts that would go looping up over the ceiling and down to a steam engine or whatever was driving it. And one of the things that I learned was that they would make these wooden gears because they'd make, when they would cast a huge cog with all these teeth on it and these big gears, basically, the size of a wagon wheel with big teeth on them. They would make it first out of wood, but then they would make a mold of it in sand and then pour the molten metal into the sand to make the thing. But they had to calculate the shrinkage when it cooled, and you know that was a trial and error thing at first. Probably it's like, this damn thing doesn't fit, you measured wrong, and then they figured it out. I wonder if it was the same thing with wood. Like the people who were used to making them knew that the swelling would happen a certain degree, and so they would anticipate the size of the diameter or whatever in order to, and these people, they only did it once, so that was their try.
Yeah. I'm sort of hoping, like, in the years since, that they've made progress on their, because they're still building that castle. I want to get there someday.
Where is it?
In France. I am blanking on the name of it.
How long have they been building it?
Oh, like 10, 15 years. I mean, it doesn't go fast.
Yeah. Is it a national project, like a French, I don't know, fund for the arts or something?
Guédelon Castle.
Guédelon?
I can't pronounce French.
Well, drop us a link later, just share a link in the Discord or something. So we're at 6:22 right now, and the recap this week is actually like almost 5 minutes long. So any final like closing remarks or things you want to add before we go to the recap?
Nope. Let's go.
All right. See y'all after the recap and then after an ad break, I guess.